correctly, this is a jig. Puts the handle right here at the bottom of this frame, and then it's universal, so if you screw up and you grab the wrong end, it's still going to put it here. And then also on the lower cabinets, the handles go near the top, just like that, and then on the upper cabinets, the handles go near the bottom, just like that. And then I need to center mark this, because on our drawer faces, we want to mark the center of this and the center of this. We'll make those marks on the drawer face, and then this will become a jig to drill the drawer faces too. So if we make a center mark, we should be able to drill for this pull perfectly. Today is going to be all about precision and patience. A lot of the detail is starting to come in to focus on this project. We're getting down to the point where something being a little wonky is going to be a massive undertaking to fix. So I spent quite a bit of time making this pull jig so that we can uniformly drill the holes for all of the hardware. We found this hardware actually at Home Depot, although we had researched it online, and we actually found it at a local hardware store. We actually found them in a suitable package at Home Depot for a better price. We figured same difference, so we went ahead and picked them up. So that's an idea, a preview of the hardware that we'll be using for the drawer pulls and for the door handles. So that jig is already built. Sister's been working on getting these dowel pins inserted into the pocket holes. We were back and forth about whether to plug these holes. The hole that was there didn't really bother me. Maybe that's because it's not my kitchen, it's more like a kitchenette downstairs. Didn't give me the oogie feelings. But we bought these pins because Craig offers them, and we decided after a short conversation that while we might not be unhappy with them unplugged, we would probably be happy with them plugged. And so we decided to go ahead and glue those up. So those have got to glue for a little while, and then we're gonna have to find a technique to sand them off. That I'm not sure about. We've talked about using the belt sander if we can do it without jeopardizing the door or tearing out the plug. Hopefully those will take maybe 45 minutes to an hour to dry, and then they'll be ready to sand. And then the third task for today is drilling all of our hinge cups. We wanted to get this done yesterday, and I am super glad we did not even try. We started on this stuff kind of really late, and we were tired, and I can tell you this is a precision thing. So we did a little bit of testing. First of all, let me back up. We actually bought a jig from Craig that is for this exact purpose. It's a 35 millimeter hinge cup jig. And we kind of had some time yesterday to kind of fart around with it and play with it. And we created kind of a sample of different offsets. So there's lots of different ways to do this. If you look at the detail on the hinges based on our reveal, which is the small gap between the door and the frame, it says that for a 1/8 inch reveal, you want a setback of somewhere between 4 and 5 millimeters. And yes, it gets super confusing having to cross between metric and standard. This jig actually has on these little guys a way to adjust the setback for your hinge. So we did a sample drill with a 3, a 4, and a 5 millimeter setback. And then we kind of farted around with that with the hinge to try to figure out which one makes the most sense. So the hinge goes in here like this. And let's say that this piece of wood represents our face frame, and this little gap right here is going to be the reveal. And with a 4 millimeter setback and the hinge adjustments all set to a middle setting, that's a different conversation, we actually end up with about an 1/8 of an inch reveal. And that means that if there's any discrepancy in the door thickness, we can still move the door this direction, and in and out. We invested in top of the line cabinet hardware. It is not cheap, but I guess we wanted to make sure that we had good functioning cabinets. The other thing is that they're very, very adjustable. And I've said it on a couple of our previous videos, I'll say it again. Everyone's told me that these inset style face frame cabinets, which is what we're building, are the least forgiving. Because if your doors aren't the correct shape or you don't get them aligned correctly, the cabinets just look terrible. Your eye is drawn to the fact that the doors aren't the same shape and the reveals are wonky, etc. This hinge is a big part of this decision to do these types of cabinets. It is adjustable in 3 directions. We can adjust the door in and out to make sure that they're flush with the face frame, left and right to make sure that the side and the center reveals are correct, and then up and down to make sure the top and bottom reveals are correct. And that's all built into this one hinge. The thing is, it's not infinitely adjustable. So what I'm realizing is that before we do any mounting of these hinges, we've got to take the time to make sure that they're all set the same. And we want to set them sort of in the middle of the spectrum of adjustability. That way, if we need to go in a little bit or out a little bit, we can. If you start all the way in, you're stuck, and now you only have the option to go out, and that would be tragic to mount that hinge only to have one option. So this jig has basically a stop collar on a Forstner bit, or basically a Forstner bit, and then these cams actually allow you to set the index for the setback. And so far it's been working really good. And then here at the top they have a little bit of a tape measure, and what it does is it zeroes on the center of the hinge. So what we've decided is that we're going to set our hinge in so that it actually lines up with the middle of the face frame. Let me show you that. So I drilled this hinge a little too high, and this would be a problem because on a really small door like this you don't really want both hinges this close to the center of the door. That kind of ridiculous, right? So what I'm thinking we're going to do is we're actually going to drill these hinges so that they are centered right over where this bottom stile comes across. And that way, if it's a large door or a small door, all the hinges are in the exact same spot. Everything to me at this point is about using jigs and repetition and trying to remove the opportunity for making a mistake. So I think if we center the hinge right here over this stile, it's going to have good support on the bottom of the door. It'll be the same on the top. Small door, large door, doesn't really matter. I think for me, the forgiveness in these hinges is going to come when we actually screw them to the face frame. So what we'll do is we'll attach this to the door, and then we're actually going to shim all the way around these doors so that they're hypothetically are perfect. And then we'll actually fasten this hinge to the face frame. That way, only thing we need to adjust is anything we just move this hinge ever so slightly during the attachment phase. And that's gonna be kind of the forgiving part of this process. My gut tells me if we can get all that done today, get the hardware drilled and ready for installation, we can get the hinge cups drilled and get all these dowels sanded off and the frames sanded off. That's actually going to be a pretty good day. But let's just pretend that we get all that done. We're going to try to move on to priming and painting. It's a fairly warm day today. We can open the garage door, turn the exhaust fan on, and it would be a great day to get the painting done. I'm not holding my breath. Well, these seem to be turning out good with the palm sander as a finish sander, but I can tell you that if you try to get it done with the belt sander, it's definitely fraught with risk. You can see here where the belt sander started chewing into the face. We have that happen on every single drawer that we've done so far, and it doesn't seem to matter whether we turn it vertical or horizontal. It's definitely fast, but it's so precarious because if you get just the slightest bit aggressive, you'll take a gouge out of the door frame. And the irony is, even then, it's still not done. So you've gouged the door frame and you still are gonna have to hand sand. So it seems to be working well to do just kind of the brunt work with the belt sander, get it down to something manageable, and then palm sanding it and getting it nice and smooth. We're also going to be sanding all these frames anyway because that's something we need to do for paint prep. So I guess we're going to have to palm sand anyway. It works good. So let's do that. too wide. Yep. So these actually need to be run through the joiner. Those are all a 1/16 over. Okay. Well, it looks solid to me. It looks beautiful, actually. So my jig worked. Definitely have to mark up the front of these, so we want to do this for sure before we paint or anything. I think it makes sense in my mind to do it before you paint anyway, because then you don't have to do anything other than just put your hardware on after paint. There's no risk of scratching or marking or anything like that. So that jig works good. Of course, these are going to be mounted through the drawers, so I'm not really sure what to do about that. One of two things is true. We either have to get a longer screw, which is possible, or we may have to drill or something the drawer front to hide these screws. I don't think you want to do that, because if you ever wanted to change your hardware, these would be buried underneath the drawer front. So I'm not sure what we're gonna do. I think I'm leaning towards tracking down longer hardware. I don't think these screws will fit through the drawer front also. All right, we survived all the sanding, did a fantastic job. I think if we were gonna stain these, or if we're going for an even higher level of detail, we'd probably break out the wood filler and fill in all these kind of little rough spots around those pegs. But the fact that we put the pegs in there, I think, is good enough for us. It's an interior part of the cabinet. It's definitely not something that we're trying to showpiece, I suppose. But this was very good learning experience. A lot of what we're doing on this cabinet project is kind of like training or practice for our other cabinets and learning what we like and what we don't like. This wasn't terrible. It wasn't super tedious, but it definitely kind of has some disasters or some perils associated with it. But if you get it right, it looks great. And then I think if we wood filled around that, it would probably look even better. The very fact that Craig labels these as paint grade, I think says a lot. This is certainly not something a person who is doing woodworking with pride would probably use. And I think, if I'm honest, you know, the purists out there, this type of technology offends them on a different level. Totally get it, guys. We're not trying to become woodworkers. So we're using woodworking as a hashtag on Instagram, but we're not trying to compete with those people out there who are just using, you know, nth precision and joinery and stuff. This is more about pragmatism and getting it done at a level of quality that's satisfactory, but also not cutting corners and wasting a tremendous amount of time on detail that's not necessary. So I think the plan is to drill for hardware on each of the doors, and that'll set us up for the hinge cups, because basically the hinge cup always goes opposite of the hardware. So I think I'm going to start on that. I've been kind of working the bugs out on that system. The jig, this will be pretty easy, won't require a lot of marking or anything, because I designed that jig to just sit here, be clamped on, drill. So that should be pretty simple. When it comes to the drawer fronts, on the other hand, that's going to be a little bit more tedious, because we've got to make these zeroing marks and make sure that those poles are in the center of the drawer. So maybe I'll work through these real quick, a little bit slower, and then we'll start tackling the doors. jig worked good. Hardware fits all of our drawer fronts. I think we're just gonna take all this hardware off. We've established that it all fits, and then these will be basically ready for sanding and prepped for paint. And so now I think we can just move on to getting all the hardware installed on the cabinet doors and drawer fronts that get them. Looks really good. Oh yeah. I was worried how that would look in that center panel, but I think it looks pretty sharp. It's actually a drawer, which is why it's going in the middle, and that's gonna turn on its side, so nice. Last one, all done?
All done.
Nice, time to work on the most treacherous part of them all. The only thing left to do, I guess not the only thing, but the only major task is getting all of these hinge cups drilled. One of the reasons that we drilled the hardware first was it gave us an orientation. So now the trick is going to be making sure that we get the hinge cups on the right side. They always go opposite the hardware. Well, something already just happened, kind of freaked me out, so I just thought I would check fit this hinge, and if you look, there's like a massive gap right here. Probably a solid quarter, if not more. So trying to figure out what the heck happened, went back and found the hinge that we were working on earlier, and if you look really closely, the profile on these hinges is different. And based on everything, I'm assuming this is actually the correct hinge. Oh, both of those are the wrong hinges. Is this the right one? Here it is. There's the right hinge. So that's got maybe an 1/8 of an inch reveal there. But look at how much this one is different. Looks to me like they sent the wrong hinges. So the question is, which one of these hinges is the correct hinge? These all came out of the same box. So whatever that little bag right there is, I'm gonna go with is the wrong hinges. So these two must have come out of that bag. So I guess the lesson there is double check your hardware, which we thought we learned already. And then these mounting plates look correct. Let's just grab a random hinge and a random mounting plate and see if it actually fits. Perfect, 1/8 of an inch of reveal. So we're good. Well, we need to figure out what's going on because it sounds to me like we're short on hardware. So we need to do a hinge count. By a stroke of a little bit of luck, we actually have too many of the correct hinges. I think I ordered a contractor pack of 30 of these, and I'm not sure where the other 4 came from. I'm not sure what's going on there, but we'll have to get back with the retailer and see what the heck's going on. But the good news is we only need 24 hinges to complete it, so we actually have 6 extra. All right, I think those are ready for final sand, and then off to primer.
Off to primer.
All right, cool. heck? Oh, maybe it's from breathing in, I don't know. Well, we had to put our head down and get some paint on. We asked ourselves around 4 o'clock, is there a chance we can get the paint done today? And the answer was yes. And I can tell you now, it's almost 9 o'clock and the answer is no. First of all, the paint took a lot more paint than we thought. When I did the drawers, we did 3 to 4 coats of lacquer and they looked fantastic. So I planned for 3 to 4 coats of spray paint with a coat of primer and a sanding step. And we were off, we were wrong. It's more like 7 or 8. We don't really know because we ran out of paint. I actually bought enough paint plus some that I thought, we'll be good, like we'll take back what we don't need. And we only got one side of about 2/3 of the face frames, doors, and drawer fronts. The paint also is not doing what I want it to do. I'm not really sure why. I'm a little miffed. If you guys have been watching our channel for any amount of time, you know that me and paint, we don't like each other. So we decided to use these hardwood plywood panels in the middle. And for whatever reason, the spray paint is literally avoiding the texture. And it's got like surface tension, so it would rather stick to itself and get taller than fill in the texture of that. And you have to put it on so heavy that it wants to run in order to get that to fill, or at least with 7 coats. So I don't know, maybe we need 20 coats or something. The other thing that's particularly annoying is these gaps on the panel where the panel and the frame meet. I swear the spray paint is making this worse. I can't even explain how, but it absolutely refuses to fill in those areas, even if you apply the paint super heavy in those areas. And if you do, and it decides to fill in, this is what it does. It fills in and then it stops. So now you've got this like fugly little runny spot right here, which just looks terrible. I guess I want to say that after all this work building these cabinets, I'm trying to build things we're proud of. I feel like once again I've got to the finishes step and I'm super frustrated. We can add in 2 things. One, it's late at night. It's been a long day. So that adds to the frustration, but I don't think in the afternoon on a lazy day, this paint would make me feel better. So tomorrow we're gonna get more paint, but I'm also tempted to move to a brush. I hate the idea of switching methodologies mid-project, but I don't think you can put enough paint on here to get what we want. We want to fill those gaps in. We want things to look more even. We were trying to do this with spray paint because we didn't want to wait 2 days between coats. The enamels that we have available to us require 2 days or 48 hours between recoats. So if we do 3 coats, you do the math. Just the finishes step of this project will take over a week. And it's not because we won't work on it, just we can't work on it. I learned that lesson with the man basket. I painted too quickly and had issues with the paint. So we just don't want to have those problems. So we're going to take a look at that tomorrow. We've got a couple of things that we can kind of test it on. We can maybe thin the enamel down a little bit and see how it looks on the back of one of these panels. So for example, this is a drawer front and this side basically won't be seen. But it does have a panel in there with texture on it. So we could play with that hypothetically just to see if the enamel will do what we want it to do. If it does, I'm not above sanding all this stuff down and prepping it for another coat. The good news is we've only done one side, so we're not talking about a tremendous amount of sanding, and we still have a bunch more stuff that we haven't even done yet. So unfortunately, maybe at this point we're better off kind of maybe checking out switching gears. For now, we're tired. We did squeeze in dinner. Family's all in bed. It's time to wind down. And I don't know, maybe in the morning the paint fairy will come and all this stuff will just look magical. So for reference, that's where we started. 2 coats of primer with a layer of sanding. And this is about where we ended up. It doesn't look terrible, but it doesn't look great either. In fact, the sheen is just all over the map. That'll probably even out overnight as the paint has time to settle in. So We'll sleep on it.